It's that jumpin', yeah. This that jumpin', start like 23. Just that jumpin', 2-4 like Kobe. Just that jumpin', shoot my shot, then beat. This that jumpin', right around smoking my trees. This that jumpin', start like 23. This that jumpin', 2-4 like Kobe. Just that jumpin', shoot my shot, then beat. Just that jumpin', right around smoking my trees. I be ballin' in music like Kobe. I'm the greatest to ever do it, they don't know it.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to an episode of Turtle's Take right here on the Undefeated Sports Network. I am Tarbill, as always. To my right this time, I got my guy Vince Turtle. How we doing tonight, brother?
Man, I'm good. You know, we just got back into town, took a little quick vacation for the wife's cousin's wedding, so we're just back and getting all back to the grind.
Back in the regular routine, right? Unfortunately, the Bears didn't gift you with a win while you were gone.
Man, so it was the worst, right? Like, the Bears lose in the type of game they played, and Denver lost to the 0-3 Vegas Raiders.
I know. I actually had Denver winning that one just because I thought the Raiders were so atrocious. But
well, you know, Josh McDaniels had to come back and cost Denver a win one more time.
Right, a little bit of vengeance there for sure. But man, there's been a lot going on since we last chatted, especially with these Bears. I know we did the quick post game there Sunday afternoon, just kind of to vent some frustration. But now that we've had a couple days to look at the tape and see how this team's really performing and understand kind of, I've broadened my horizons for sure, I would say, on the Chicago Bears team. And, you know, as frustrated as I am as a fan, I do have to say that I didn't expect much out of this season. At one point, I was drinking the Kool-Aid and I was thinking that maybe this team could win 9 or 10 games. Obviously, been brought back down to reality over the last couple weeks with these detrimental losses. Obviously, week 2 losing to Green Bay, and then here in week 4 losing to the Giants. Week 2 obviously hurt a little bit more because of the Bears-Packers rivalry, but this last game, man, it was just a poor performance all around from Justin Fields, the receivers, the O-line, and then the defense got ran all over on those bootlegs and nakeds. They looked absolutely too slow to the ball in the first half. Obviously, that trued up in the second half a little bit, but this team's tough to watch right now, man. It's not something that, you know, when you're watching a game and you're on the edge of your seat, you feel good about it because your team's scoring 20, 30 points and putting up a nice lead. We're unfortunately not in that situation. We're in a situation where we're on the edge of the seat, nail biting, hoping that the Bears can somehow pull it out. And kicking 4 field goals in the NFL just doesn't get it done, man. You got to be able to score touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that kind of feels like they're just playing the game, trying to stay in it, and have some fluke or some freak play happen that makes it, you know, wind up going their way and they can eke out a win. I mean, the wins they have, if you look at them, you got San Francisco against Trey Lance making his first career start in a monsoon where nobody could even stand up, let alone have an offensive game plan. You know, and then you see the Houston game. I mean, where it was a game that I think all week everybody felt pretty comfortable that the Bears were going to go in, they were going to handle business, and they were going to win that one comfortably. And instead, you get a last-second field goal. Right, you get a last-second field goal to win the game. I think as Bears fans, and we're, you know, us that do this as well as just regular fans, I think we all are guilty of drinking the Kool-Aid. I think we all get caught up in the Justin Fields hype and the new coaching change and the new GM and, you know, everything. And I think we lost sight at some point that this team is not very good. and the team isn't built very well either. You know, they didn't build this team to compete. You know, they were very clear with what their intentions were, and I feel like they stayed that path. And us moron meathead Bear fans were like, oh, but they have such an easy schedule. Like, and that's the crazy part, right? Like, you could look at the schedule and say, well, I could see a win here. I could see a win here. I could see a win here. And
not so much anymore, though.
Right. And at the end of the day, the problem is the team is just not that good, and you can't count on them to go out and win a game that you feel they should win, nor can you count on them to make plays when they need to on either side of the ball.
Right.
You know, you saw Sunday, Daniel Jones gets hurt. Tyrod Taylor comes in. He gets hurt. Saquon Barkley becomes the quarterback. And they proceed to run the – and you knew he wasn't going to throw the ball.
Right.
And he just proceeded to run it down the Bears' throat, and nobody could stop him. And unfortunately, that's just where we're at.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for sure. I mean, to allude back to what you said there about drinking the Kool-Aid as fans, it's like, obviously you can't judge a team too much by preseason, but you come out, you see Justin Fields dropping dimes in the final preseason game, and it's like, okay, pass rushers or not, he should be able to make some of those plays situationally when it comes to the regular season.
Right.
And thus far, we just haven't seen it. I mean, the production hasn't been there. I was a dumb homer and took Darnell Mooney late in a couple of my fantasy football drafts. And with the exception of last week, he's absolutely burned me. And even he had 94 yards last week, but he didn't have a touchdown. So how much does that get you?
And only 4 catches.
Right. Especially if you're in a quarter PPR league. But,
right.
You know, all of that aside, I think just as fans, we expected more than the reality of the situation. Like, you look at this receiving core, and it's something that I've said multiple times live on this network, is just, you look at this receiving core and you see nothing but guys who would be third and fourth string, if not practice squad guys on other teams. I mean, you look, Darnell Mooney's clearly not a number one. I hate to say it. Everyone wants him to turn into that number one receiver, but he's not a number one receiver. He's a good 2. I would say at this point, a solid 2 on most teams. But on the other hand, if you don't have a true number 1 to throw the ball to, that 2 is going to be covered every single time. And that's what we're seeing thus far this season. And who's Justin going to go to? Equinemius St. Brown, sure, he's got some speed, but when he was in Green Bay, he was known for dropping the ball. He's had a couple clutch catches this season so far.
He's like, it's like when you're walking down the street and you see a used car lot and you see, they got that car on a platform and you're like, man, look at how shiny that car is. Look at how nice it looks. Look at how great that car is. Look what kind of condition it's in. It's just ready to roll. And I think that's kind of
then you realize it's a skeleton.
Right. And you fall in love with it. And you're like, oh, like you said, when you don't have a number 1, so now you've got Darnell Mooney has to be your number 1. Well, that means that whoever your number 2 is, which like you pointed to, Equinemius St. Brown becomes your probably your number 2. Well, now he's not ready to be able to beat that coverage every play, right? Like, otherwise he's not a rookie. Like, at this point, he'd be better in his career if he won one-on-one matchups more consistently. So now you're asking him to be a player that he's not, and you're asking that all over the field. And when you do that left to right, from offensive line to receiver to tight end to different things, everything you do, you're just taking more and more away. And then you take, arguably your best receiver other than Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet, and you've got to keep them around the line of scrimmage every play because you can't keep anybody off the quarterback. And then then you've got a quarterback that holds the ball too long. So you've got a quarterback that holds the ball too long with an offensive line that can't block anybody. And it's like,
and these issues are just compounding, right? At that point.
And then it makes it hard to judge the coaching staff, right? Because you have everybody talking about, this offensive game plan is worse than Matt Nagy's. But then at the same time, when you can't even establish the line of scrimmage to run the ball or to throw the ball, what are you supposed to do? So then it
Right.
becomes, is he really a bad coach? Is Getsy in over his head? Or does he just doing the best he can with what he has? And we really won't know until it plays out more.
You're playing cards with a very limited deck, so to speak. Two things I
Absolutely.
want to touch on here with the receiving core. Number one, do you believe that N'Keal Harry, when healthy, could come out and be that number one guy?
See, this is why you and I do so well. You're like, we're right on the same page here. So the other night we had the game, and then we had our post-game show, and it was very volatile, as the Bears tend to make us be.
Of course.
So that night I couldn't sleep, and I wrote out some things. And it will kind of tie into two things, because it was I'll just read to you what I wrote.
Okay, go ahead.
So this part of it covers N'Keal Harry. I said, Justin Fields, I owe you an apology. I spoke out of reaction as a Bear fan, not as a professional, and I would like to say it is way too soon to tell if he truly is going to be a franchise quarterback we've all hoped that he will become. He's playing behind a makeshift offensive line without proper weapons around him and with very questionable conservative play calling that is not allowing him to get into a rhythm, nor is it allowing him to learn from his mistakes. Lack of number one receiver may be fixed when N'Keal Harry comes back from the IR. He's a big body receiver that a lot of people said he just needed to change the scenery. Don't forget, Ocho Cinco went to New England and didn't fit in either. Josh McDaniels has been known to move on from guys before he actually gives them a shot. It'll be interesting to see what he can do once he gets healthy for the Bears. So
very well said. I do have to say, good to hear you say you're not ready to give up on Justin Fields yet, but
you speak right after a game, and especially a game like that, and
emotions are hot.
Yeah,
sure. I get it.
Now the second half of that is, after the N'Keal Harry thing, I said, and to help fix this, in addition to N'Keal Harry, Ryan Poles should be in constant contact with Odell Beckham Jr. and his agent, and monitor his recovery, and must find a way to sign him, even if it means signing him sooner than any other team is willing to do. It's worth the risk for a one-year deal, and you have cap space to burn.
I like it. Very interesting second portion there for sure. I think a guy like Odell would be value to this team, obviously, once he is healthy. And like you said, keep in constant contact with him. Just keep reaching out, show your interest, and if you have to pull the trigger a little bit sooner, it might be worth it to have a guy that would arguably be the number. I mean, obviously, he'd be the number one on this team.
Yeah, I mean,
brought him to Chicago. Not that Beckham's truly a clear-cut number one at this point in his career, but he'd be the best of the situation that we have. But back. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you see what he did when he went to the Rams the end of last year, and the touchdowns, the production. Obviously, it's nice being an offense that was loaded as they were, with guys like Cooper Kupp and guys like that. But, you think about the Bears offense, and then you go from what you're seeing every week to being able to spread the field a little more and run Odell Beckham, N'Keal Harry, Darnell Mooney, Pringle when he gets back. Now he's a complimentary guy versus somebody that's supposed to win. Same thing with St. Brown. Everybody talks about his speed, able to stretch the field. If you add a N'Keal Harry and Odell Beckham, now you're asking St. Brown to just do what he does his whole career, just stretch the field.
Right. Yeah, and that totally changes the dynamic. Back to what you were saying about N'Keal Harry, though, I think it is very, I don't want to say promising, but it's good to know that they have something in the works, right, with Harry. And I think if he comes out and he's healthy, like you said, he's a big-bodied guy. That's the big thing, is this offense really lacks a big-bodied, even if he's not a true number one off pure talent.
Right.
He has the height and weight and, style movement of a true number one receiver, being, you think of that guy that's tall, got a little bit of stockiness to him, able to go up and catch those 50-50 balls.
I feel like he's one of those guys. He's like everything that we all thought or were told Kevin White was going to be.
Exactly.
He's got the speed, he's got the big body, but he can actually run the route tree. The problem with Kevin White was when he was at West Virginia, he only ran one route. It was the 9. It was the go route. Right. That was it. So
And
you get a
can't
guy
have
like
a guy just running that
right,
nine go route in the NFL.
So
It's
you get a
not going
guy
to
like
work.
N'Keal Harry, who, from what we've seen, even in his time in New England, the limited sample that we got, he is a guy that'll go fight for the ball. He'll go up for those 50-50 balls. I think that was one of the. I know myself. I can't speak for everybody else, but I know myself. One of my problems with Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson wanted to be paid like a number one receiver, but he wouldn't go get those balls. Like your number one receiver, if all else, especially a young quarterback like Justin Fields, you can't take plays off. Like you have to be there for him. You have to be the guy
Every
that
play,
when everything else goes to crap on a play, he knows he can just throw it your way, and at the very least, you won't let the ball get picked off.
Right, and that's ultimately what kind of frustrated me with the previous regime, especially in their treatment of Justin Fields last year. I feel like Matt Nagy definitely out-schemed Allen Robinson a little bit intentionally. And, you could sense the frustration between both parties at times on the field. And it was just a bad situation for the Bears. Even if they knew they were going to move on from him, I feel like they could have handled his final season in Chicago a little better. And, really, if you look at it, Allen Robinson probably should have had the numbers that Darnell Mooney had last year, but they gave a lot of those big shots to Darnell Mooney and turned the ball away from Robinson. And that's
we
neither here nor there, right?
We fell into this Matt Nagy thing where everything we heard about Darnell Mooney, and not this is not a knock on Darnell Mooney because I think he is a very good NFL wide receiver. He could be one of the best number twos in football. But
agreed.
Everything out of Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace was, well, he's Tyreek Hill. Well, the reason Tyreek Hill is because he's the only one like that. Like, if every guy that looked like Tyreek Hill and had that body style could do the things Tyreek Hill does, it wouldn't be such a big thing to say, well, he's Tyreek Hill. Well, that's why Tyreek Hill is the only one that does that. He's got the speed. Right. You see him just outrun double teams. You take a quarterback like Tua, who hasn't had a whole lot of NFL success, and everybody, questions the arm strength, and it makes it easier when all he has to do is throw the ball as far as he can because Tyreek Hill's going to run past the double team.
Right.
And, so when you have a young quarterback like Justin Fields, if you had a weapon like that, then yeah, it's different. But when Darnell Mooney is who he is and, limited where he's limited and excels at what he does, but he's not Tyreek Hill. And like you said, you had a coach and GM that I don't know, I won't say for sure they did, but it definitely seems like they phased Allen Robinson out of the game plan as the season went on. And then you had a new GM come in, and at that point, Allen Robinson wanted, top wide receiver in football money. And he was like, dude, I'm just not going to pay you that. Like, regardless what the reasons were, your production doesn't warrant that. And, see he left for less money to go to the Rams. And we'll see how that plays out for him. He hasn't been a major part of that offense, but
our guy Ace is saying in the chat he wants to go play O-line for the Bears.
Hey,
at this point probably be better than Sam Mustipher. Just saying. Sorry.
Yeah, Ola. I mean, at this point, it's one of them. Anybody that's in the Chicagoland area has a Bears jersey and is 300 plus pounds should report to Alice Hall tomorrow.
No, realistically, before we move into the O-line play, I do want to touch on a couple more things at the wide receiver position. One thing that really frustrated me, and going back and watching the tape, Velus Jones had 0 snaps on offense.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of those things that. So is he fully healthy? Was it just because they needed the body and without David Montgomery, Ebner had to be the backup running back. So now you don't want him returning kicks. So did it
makes me question.
Did they dress it up? Did they dress him just for that? Or, don't forget, he's also been hurt. They haven't really seen much out of him, but he's one of those guys that if you drafted him because of his, game-changing speed is what we heard, then even if he hasn't really been able to show you anything in practice because he hasn't been healthy, if he was fully healthy, I would think that at some point he would get in there and just give him a shot. Just go deep, kid. Just run as far as you can.
Well, and hopefully next week we'll see him take the training wheels off a little bit. And
I don't know. After that fumble, they
put
might
Bayless out
put the training wheels back on.
Well, as bad as that fumble was, I think that realistically it was just first game jitters. You know what I mean? I don't
First game jitters, the situation, the weather, everything. It's just one of those things.
Obviously, we were frustrated because it took away the Bears' chance to win that game. But
right, it's all time and place.
Let me say this before we go back to the receivers for one last point. Do you think the Bears would have been able to march the ball down the field and score a touchdown at that position when they hadn't done so all game?
Nothing that they did makes you think that they would, but at the same time, it feels like, and this is why what I was saying earlier about the overly conservative play calling, it seems like whenever they do decide to kind of push the ball and start and try to go downfield, they seem to have success, which has been one of the more frustrating things as a fan. And as just for me, somebody who really loves the game of football and studies it, like it's been every single time they've pushed the ball, not just here and there, but every time they do it, they have success. I just don't understand why they don't go or why they go away from it so much. And it's not just that, like, you had David Montgomery chewing up Green Bay, and then you don't see him really much. He just doesn't seem like he's part of the game plan anymore.
He had like 6 carries in the first half for 100 yards, and then you didn't see him for the rest of the first half.
Right. It just, especially when you have a young quarterback. Right. It's so head scratching when you have a young quarterback. It's those things like, and you got a hot running back, feed him. Nobody cares if Justin Fields goes 14 of 18 for 200 yards and, because David Montgomery's chewing everybody up. We don't need to see him throw the ball 45 times.
Right. Well, and that's not how this offense was built either.
Right.
That's the thing that we all have to remember is Luke Getsy ran an outside zone scheme in Green Bay, and he's going to continue those same fundamentals here in Chicago. We've seen it week over week. Obviously, the run game has had more success than the pass game due to a number of factors. Largely, the pass blocking is not very good.
Right.
Justin Fields is holding the ball a little too long, and none of these damn receivers are getting open. And when they are getting open, they're dropping balls that are put right in their chest. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's blame to pass around completely with the entire offense.
Unfortunately, there is enough blame to go around.
But just alluding back to the wide receiver position, you look at Velus Jones when completely healthy. And to that point, you said maybe they're just trying to ease him in and maybe he's not 100%. Well, look at what they did with Lucas Patrick, right?
Right.
They rotated him in, kind of just got him out there on the field for a few snaps here and there until he was really comfortable to be rotated in on a more regular basis. So maybe that's their equivalent of doing that with Velus Jones, right? At the receiver position. They're just trying to sprinkle him out there and see what he can do for the return game. I think it'll be interesting to see if we see Velus take snaps on offense next week. I think it will definitely help because he's got to be your number 2 when healthy, right? And,
I mean, you hope he is, right? Like you drafted him,
right?
You drafted him where you drafted him because you're hoping that you think in your mind, well, he's better than Equinemius St. Brown. You didn't pass on the guys you passed on because you thought he was going to be not even your number 2.
No, absolutely agree. And for me, the biggest thing, so if N'Keal Harry comes out and looks like a big-bodied, let's say, number 1 receiver for the purpose of this conversation, then you've got a 1 in N'Keal Harry, a 2 in Darnell Mooney, and then your option 3 is Velus Jones. That sounds a lot better than Darnell Mooney at number 1, Equinemius St. Brown at number 2, and who's your number 3, Pettis or really it's probably Pettis at this point.
Right, at this point it's probably Pettis. The thing about Darnell Mooney that makes him as good as he is that for his size, he actually runs most of his routes from the outside.
Yeah,
He's
which
not
is
your
rare
slot
for his
receiver,
size, for
which
sure.
usually his size means, okay, well, I'm going to play the slot. Well, now that takes away Byron Pringle. It takes away Velus Jones. It makes all those guys have to play on the outside. So if like we said, obviously this is hypothetical. Nobody messages, tell us we're idiots. But if N'Keal Harry looks like a number one, well, then he takes over your number one spot. Darnell Mooney is solidified already as a number two. Now you've got Velus Jones, Byron Pringle, Pettis, St. Brown, guys that you can now put in certain situations versus putting one of them in and saying, look, I need you to win on this play. Now it's one of those, well, we're going to put you in a slot and let you just take the top off and let everybody else work underneath.
That's where the separation will come too, right? That's been one of the biggest knocks on the Bears wide receiver core is that these guys aren't getting separation, but none of these guys really, with the exception of Mooney, should be running a streak route down the field on a 4 verticals play.
Right. Absolutely.
None of these guys are going to beat their defender 9 times out of 10 on that play. There was a play last week that got highly criticized that Fields tucked the ball where he should have thrown it.
He should have pushed it up the seam.
But you look and then you really watching the tape, I noticed that how many times they run a route similar to that and then how many times those receivers are covered. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for missing that one time because 9 times out of 10, those guys are getting smothered. And I do have to say, after looking back at the tape, man, some of the defensive pass interference on our receivers is blatant and obvious. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the refs don't call that as tight as they used to for sure. But I mean, you look and freeze a frame and you see a guy literally being pushed down at the receiver position.
Right.
And there's no flag. And you can tell that's where Justin wanted to go with the ball because he's
I think part of that
the receiver down.
Right. And I think part of that goes back to, winning more. As you win more and the offense produces more, I feel like the refs are a little more willing and quick to throw the flag.
You the benefit of the doubt,
right, and give them the doubt when they're like, oh, he usually makes that play. It really interfered with it. I mean, when you've got guys that aren't creating separation anyways, they're putting themselves in a position to be interfered with, and the ref is like, well, they just kind of got caught up with each other.
Right. Well, and you even look at Justin Fields, right? The no calls on him last year when he was running out of the pocket were very questionable, to say the least, at times. You're like, how is that not a flag? Aaron Rodgers gets that flag 9 times out of 10. Tom Brady gets that flag 9 times out of 10. But obviously it's the same principle, right? If you're somebody like Lamar Jackson, for instance, if he's out running and he gets speared, he's going to get the call 9 times out of 10 for
10 times out of 10.
10 times out of 10 for the helmet to helmet or whatever the call is on the hit. Justin Fields wasn't getting those calls last year. He is getting them more now so this year, but it's one of those situations, man, where it's like the best part of Justin Fields' season thus far is arguably his ability to rush. And he hasn't even done that as much as he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, the best way I see it is, the more as you play and guys go in there, they go from rookie to this. And sometimes I feel like it's more because we see, like, that's what we watch, right? Like, everybody watches their own team. So when we see Justin Fields get hit and we don't get a flag, well, we go, well, every other quarterback would. I feel like there's more games than if we were watching other games where quarterbacks don't get the flag either. But again, it's, when the offense isn't producing and you've got guys that aren't, well, maybe Justin Fields is, 30th out of 32 or 32 out of 32 of quarterbacks, the refs are a little hesitant to throw the flag. They're going to be more, it was borderline, then no, that's definitely roughing the passer.
Well, and it comes down to the question a little bit too. Does he slide late almost intentionally to try to get that call?
Right.
Or does he stand up like a runner, like he's a running back more than a quarterback, intentionally to try to get a call? And, I think with where this offense is at currently, that's definitely I mean, it's got to be in the thought process, right? If you're running the ball on 3rd and 7 as a quarterback and you're 2 yards short, well, if you slide a little bit late, you might get that call and bam, you're 15 yards down the field. You got another set of downs. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Bears are thinking that way, but
No, I
there's
definitely
there's
understand
not a
where you're coming
single
from.
I mean, there's not really a single bright spot thus far on this offense, and that's what's frustrating is
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, the run game has been a bright spot, right? Like they've been able to run when they decide to run the ball. They've been able to do it with pretty good success. Montgomery had a really good game. Khalil Herbert has now had back-to-back really good games. Obviously, 2 weeks ago was a little more than it was this past week, but it wasn't a huge game, but it was moderately successful for him.
It was good for a backup, and that was one thing that you highlighted in the post game was like, man, you can't really ask for more than 4 yards a carry out of your backup running back. And going back and watching the tape as I have over the last couple of days, I see that, and I see what you're saying. And when he did run, he ran hard and he put the effort in. It's just one of those things where now David Montgomery's out. I don't want to say you don't respect Ebner at this point, but Ebner's still relatively unproven. So now that this guy's shouldering the load, and when he's in the backfield in shotgun, he's taking the ball to run that outside zone because that's what Getsy likes to do.
Right. And again, that goes back to like we were talking earlier about Velus Jones. Maybe they felt like he was dressing just to be a return guy because knowing Ebner had to be the backup running back to Khalil Herbert, who was going to get the majority of the work if something happened to Khalil Herbert, then it was only Ebner.
Right. That makes sense. And I think Getsy and Eberflus both are making some strategic decisions. One thing, some of the sideline mic'd up tape was released over probably the last 8 to 10 hours. And, you saw the video and Fields. I'm sorry, this was from the previous week against Houston. Fields threw that second interception, and you see Getsy on the sideline just saying, like, it's all good. I got your back. Move on to the next play. We're going to keep pushing the ball downfield. I trust you. Like, literally said, I trust you. And it's like, okay, those are good things to hear because that was one of my largest concerns is like, does this offense, if coordinator, just not trust Justin Fields yet to the point where they're calling more conservative because of that? I don't think that's the case. I think they're going with what works, feeding the hot hand, so to speak. And the run game has been the strong point. It's harder to go away from the run when it's working well. When you can put up, against Houston, they put up 240 rushing yards between Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery before Montgomery got hurt.
Right.
It's hard to go away from that. It's hard to justify going away from that.
Well, and, right now when you're in a situation that you're trying to, hold hand in hand, lead the development of Justin Fields as a quarterback, as well as win football games, I think you kind of tiptoe the line sometimes. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was a conversation between Getsy and Eberflus that they decided, like, look, we have to protect him. And if we can't protect him with the offensive line, we have to protect him by running the football. We have to protect him by limiting when we allow the other team to take shots at him, right? Like, I know fans get really frustrated, 3rd and long, and you get like a draw play to the running back. And it's like, if you think about it, right, this season isn't as much about wins and losses as it is about Justin Fields because the Bears will only go as far as he takes them.
Oh, absolutely.
So then when you're in a 3rd and long and the defense can pin their ears back and come after the quarterback, when you're already having a problem just stopping the front 4, now when they're bringing extra personnel to come after Justin, part of that was just saying, look, let's not risk him taking a shot here where he gets left unprotected and somebody can haul off and take his head off. Like, let's just run the ball, punt it, and go play defense and live to run another play.
Well, and I can respect that a little bit just based on the thought process that you're given there. You look at obviously his first game of his career against Cleveland last year.
I was just going to say, the worst case scenario for Justin is a Cleveland game where he just gets his head beat in.
Yeah, let him get his head beat in. He was sacked, 9 times that game, I believe?
Something like that.
And, what good does that do instilling confidence in a young quarterback either? So it's a very fine line, and I understand what you're saying there regarding if you can't really protect him with the offensive line, why not protect him by running the ball in those predictable situations? Now,
especially in the ones that you don't, the 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s, you're probably not going to pick those up anyways. This team isn't built like that. Kansas City, Green Bay, some of those you're like, man, they seem to pick it up every time. You're not expecting the Bears to come up with a play like that. And there's very few plays in the playbook that, especially that Bears playbook right now, that's designed to get 12 to 15 yards. And as far as the move on, let it go. The one thing for you want a young quarterback is a short memory. Like move on to the next play. Don't dwell on the interception. Don't dwell on, missing this guy. Let's just move on to the next. And if you look, even Peyton Manning, he threw, I think, 30-something interceptions his rookie year. Then he went on to have a Hall of Fame career. Who cares? Nobody cares what they do in a year that you're not supposed to win. You might as well get those mistakes out now so that when we do get a team that's ready to compete, you're not making those mistakes then.
Right. And I will say, just one more thing on Justin Fields before we move forward. To me, it's frustrating as a fan, and you can easily let your emotions kind of overwhelm you a little bit and be frustrated that they're not letting him throw the ball 30 plus times a game or whatever that number is. I mean, obviously last week they gave him more opportunities. It was just tough and they didn't convert. And I don't know that. I think the defense of the Giants is a little bit better than people are giving them credit for.
Yeah.
They've got some good linebackers that when they come up to rush the quarterback are very aggressive, and their edge rush is decent as well. They're not top 5 in the league by any means, but I think they're a little bit better than you give them credit for. And then your offensive line is just so weak that, you saw at least 3 plays on Sunday where there were free runners completely unguarded, just going at Justin to spear him. And it's like,
yeah, I think after the injury to Cody Whitehair, regardless what people think about Cody Whitehair, whether they think he's part of the future or part of the problem, regardless of what side of that debate you fall on, it's undebatable that he is the glue of that offensive line. He's the captain of it. He's making sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. He's making sure everybody knows their assignments and knows what they're supposed to do on every play. So when you lose him, you now have an inexperienced, underperforming offensive line that now also has to worry about making sure they're where they're supposed to be because you don't have Cody Whitehair reminding you, hey, you got this guy. Hey, switch on this. So I think it just is one of those things where when certain things happen, this Bears team, you're going to see them almost go into a shell and protect Justin Fields however they have to.
Well, and that's fine. If that's the reason that they're running the ball on 3rd and long, that's justifiable. That's not something that I've actually considered, even just as recently as Sunday, being super frustrated with the performance of the team. But maybe that is the case. Maybe they're just trying to make sure that we don't end up with Trey Lance type situation where now your guy, the future of your franchise, is down and out for a season, and we don't have a Jimmy G on our bench. We got Trevor Siemian, who, don't get me wrong, is a competent backup, but he's not as good as Jimmy G. Like, at what point do you accept that some things are going to be conservative to protect the longevity of the future of your franchise?
Yeah. You're muted.
If you think that he's the future of your franchise, that's exactly what you do, right? That's exactly how you should play it. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to, like I said, at the end of the day, you have to limit the shots that Justin takes, whenever you can.
Yeah, for sure. No, but with that being said, I think the defense more has surprised me. I said last week that I wasn't worried about the defense, that I thought their performance would be strong. They would do fine. When we did the pregame show, our keys to victory were all offensive related, nothing about the defense. And then the defense came out in the first half and got ran all over. I mean, Daniel Jones looked like he was Lamar Jackson out there for a little bit. And that's super frustrating, as not only as a fan, but as somebody who analyzes the game. You know, your defense has to be just as strong as your offense for you to be competitive, and they both can't be lackluster, or you're going to have an outing like you had on Sunday.
Well, I mean, I think you see both spectrums of it, right? Like you see teams who they have that stout defense and no offense. And then you see teams like Detroit. Look at the Detroit Lions. Everybody has nothing but bad things to say about the Detroit Lions. But then if you look at the numbers, they're the number 3 offense in football because they have a talented offense. They just can't stop anybody when the other team has the ball.
That was what I wanted to allude to as well. So I'm glad you brought up the Detroit Lions. They've scored the most points in football, correct, through the first 4 weeks?
Yes, they scored. They have the most points scored, and they're 3rd in total offense.
And I think they're 30th or 31st in defense.
They're
not dead last.
I know they're in the 30s, either 30, 31st, or 32nd in pretty much every category.
So,
they just don't have a whole lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. The guys they do have just don't really seem to, show up on Sundays. The one guy that I really do like on that defense is the corner Okuda, but he can't cover everybody. He
can't cover the whole field.
Right. So, one of the things I wrote, when I was writing my notes down was Roquan. Roquan, you said you don't want to be here because you deserve to be the top paid linebacker in football and you're disrespected that you didn't get that offer. Then if that's the case, I'm going to need you to play like it. This defense is perfect for him to showcase his talent in the scheme, yet he has underperformed this season. You get a guy like Roquan, he had to hold out. He had all the nonsense about being disrespected and this and that. And then he comes out and they literally run the ball right at him.
And he doesn't stop it.
And he can't stop it.
That is definitely frustrating. I think obviously Roquan week 3 had a better game than he's had the rest of the season so far. 16 tackles in that game, and obviously the pick there at the end of the game to seal the deal for the Bears. But you look at Roquan Smith and his whole body of work. He doesn't rush the passer like a guy like Shaq Leonard does. And he just, in my opinion, no matter how many tackles he's getting, no matter how good he is in the locker room and the chemistry is great and blah, 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 at the end of the day, he's not a number 1 linebacker money type of guy. I think he's surely worth that 15 to 17 million, I'd say, comfortably, but he's not worth 20 plus million a year, in my opinion, and he's not going to get it from anyone but other than the Bears, in my opinion.
Right.
If he walks away.
I think it's really easy to fall in love with the numbers. It's really easy to fall in love with the leading the league in tackles and the 100+ tackles every year and this and that. But he's not an elite pass rusher. He's not an elite coverage guy. He does both well. He does them both better than the average player in the NFL. But he doesn't.
But he's not elite at either.
Elite, where you're saying, "Well, I need to pay this guy $20 million," and that's where it falls into that thing. Do you pay him $20 million and say I have to have him in that position, or do you say, "Well, with this defense, I feel I can put somebody else in there and have pretty close to the same production for a lot less money"?
Right. I feel like I can put Sanborn out there and
and that's the thing.
You've got some good backups and good rotational pieces on this defense at the linebacker position for sure. Obviously,
sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say that like we were talking about the post-game show, I think it goes into, part of the decision to bring in Matt Eberflus as head coach, because part of his scheme on defense is going to allow you to get more out of less. And you can do that on defense. I don't know that you can get away with that on offense.
Totally agree, and that makes sense. One of the things that you alluded to in the post-game show the other day was that it's easier to build an offense up than it is to build a defense up. And at the time I disagreed wholeheartedly, but I keep going back to the Detroit Lions, and obviously right now they're a top 5 offense, like you said, 3rd overall, and they're getting demolished by teams defensively. Geno Smith should not be able to put up more than 21 points on any team in the NFL. Geno Smith is a competent backup at best, and you've got him as your starter over there in Seattle. And don't get me wrong, it helps. He's got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to throw the ball to. I could probably look like a rock star out on the field throwing the ball to those two guys, but realistically, it's just like you look at Geno Smith and what he's been able to do against that Lions team this past week. And all season they've scored 30 plus points and they're 1-3. Like,
I think for me, the biggest thing that stands out to me is third downs, right? Like, give me a defense that can get off the field when they get to third down. That Detroit-Seattle game, it went back and forth. And, every time Detroit started to come back and they were getting close, they'd get Seattle third down and they'd give up a 3rd and 8. They'd give up a 3rd and 10. They'd give up a 3rd and 7, and they just couldn't get off the field. And then you see when that a team is running the ball to run the clock out, and you see Rashad Penny break off a 52-yard touchdown on 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1, whatever it was.
3rd and 1, yeah.
When you can get off the field, and instead you give up a 52-yard touchdown that breaks your back and pretty much ends any chance you had. And it's like, it's those moments that you look at. It's like, where is the drive? Where is the passion? Where is the competitive, wherewithal just to say, I'm going to beat the pride that I'm going to beat the guy across from me. And when there's too many guys on one defense that don't have it, those are the type of plays you see.
Right. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the Bears defense is nearly as bad as the Lions defense. Obviously, I think
but it plays as bad at times.
Once we see Jalen Johnson come back, I think him being healthy is going to be a key to this defensive success, because it's going to take some stress off of your rookies, right? Obviously, right now, everyone's going to play Brisker and Gordon. They're going to play to Kendall Vildor because he's probably the weakest out of the bunch. Man,
I'm just so tired of seeing him get beat. It just time after time
and badly.
Being
it's like
in the wrong spot, like just not knowing what defense he's playing.
Well, and at some point it's situational football and just put up or shut up and understand what you got to do out there. However, the one really bright spot for this defense thus far, and we highlighted it before the season, so I want to bring it up now again to share in our track record of things we've gotten right over the years. Eddie Jackson is back to being that ball hawk Eddie Jackson that he was when he was first drafted, that he was when he was in college at Alabama. Roll Tide. And I love it, man. I love seeing Eddie Jackson being that ball hawk, get those picks and make those impact plays. It's good to see him return to his true form, because he was a guy that I was really on the fence with at the start of this season, just because they asked him to do too much last year. And then they faulted him for not doing enough when they were giving him too much on his plate.
It was one of those situations where the team was bad, the coaching staff was bad, the GM was bad. Right. They had him playing a position that he doesn't play. And he actually had a pretty good year at it. I think he was top 3 in tackles for the Bears. As a whole last year.
All the missed tackles that he had, he did have a lot of tackles.
Oh, absolutely. Obviously. So I actually did write a little something about Eddie Jackson in my notes. As you pointed to, we've tend to get a lot of things right on this show, and especially when it comes to the predictions. And Eddie Jackson was definitely one of them. So I wrote down, I would like to say to all the haters and all the people who said Eddie Jackson was awful and should have been gone by now, We told you so. He's back to being the playmaking free safety that he truly is, and that's because Jaquan Brisker allows him to play that role. So easy with the criticism of the pick of Jaquan Brisker, because if you don't pick Jaquan Brisker, Eddie Jackson is still playing downhill, being exposed as a tackler, and those interceptions he has are going by the wayside. They may not seem like something now, but when this team is ready to compete, Eddie Jackson and his ability to take the ball away and change the game will definitely stand out.
Oh, definitely. Totally agree 100%. Obviously, like you said, we touched on that at the beginning of the season, and a lot of people were throwing shade just at the idea that Eddie Jackson could have a bounce back year. And look at him, 3 picks through 4 games. You can't ask for a guy to play better than that.
And I mean, that's who Eddie Jackson is. Right, like that's who Eddie Jackson is. It's who he's always been. He's going to stay back there. He's going to play center field, and he's going to try to bait the quarterback, and he's going to try to jump a route and grab the ball. Like that's who he is.
And he's doing it now that they're letting him do it schematically. It's a refreshing breath of air in this defense that sure has given up the run a little bit too much. But if they true up the run defense, honestly, no quarterbacks passing all over this defense so far this season. I mean, Aaron Rodgers even at times looked hesitant to make a throw because the defense was good. Obviously, a few blown plays, rookie mistakes, things like that. But I think with the additions of Brisker and Gordon, as frustrated as I've been at times this year, and oh man, they could have traded up and got Chris Olave, or they could have traded up and got, any number of the receivers that were taken in the first round. Those guys are fundamental pieces to this defense, and you added two high caliber starters who are going to have hopefully very good and long careers here with the Bears, and you've trued up those positions for, 5 to 10 years in your first year as GM and head coach. Now you've got, when healthy, arguably one of the solidest secondaries in football. You got to do a little bit of work to your linebacking core and your edge rush. I think one thing to allude to there, Robert Quinn, man, where has Robert Quinn been these last 4 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things when you get to line up with Khalil Mack on the other side for most of the – obviously he missed some of the time last year. Right. But when you do line up, with Khalil Mack on the other side and teams are worried about him, they're not worried about you, it's really easy to go one-on-one and get to the quarterback. Now Robert Quinn is getting that double team on a almost every snap rate, and he's become pretty much non-existent. And you hear people say, well, how can you expect him to perform or produce when he gets double teamed? Aaron Donald gets triple and quadruple teamed at times and still makes plays. He just is what it is.
They said the same thing about Khalil Mack, right? Oh, Khalil Mack's getting double teamed, triple teamed. That's why he's not producing. Khalil Mack's having an okay start to the season over there in Los Angeles, but it's not like he's out there crushing it. Or I'm sorry, San Diego Chargers. It's not like he's having as our buddy Greg Braggs would say, the region, because he lives out in Crown Point, but he's from the region here. No, in all seriousness, man, I think it's one of those things where, again, I go back and I allude to that simple phrase, kind of put up or shut up. When it's time to step up and perform, you can only use the excuse of getting double and sometimes nobody's triple teaming Robert Quinn, but double teamed for sure. You can only use the excuse of getting double teamed for so many weeks where it's like, okay, well, if you're a playmaker and you're a guy that's worth this big contract that the Bears gave you, go out there and make plays. I don't know, man. Defensively, like I said, I'm feeling good about the secondary. I'm not so keen on everything else. I mean, the D-line, the edge rush, Roquan's okay, but even through the first couple weeks, people were calling him Sloquan because he couldn't get to the ball.
Right. I mean, that's those things you hold out and you don't have the preseason, and then you're a little behind. I mean, so this kind of covers what we're talking about and kind of segues to the next part of, the Bears.
Go ahead.
One thing I said, my timeline inbox are full of people calling for the firing of Luke Getsy and or Matt Eberflus. They're 4 games into a rebuild. They're 4 games into a rebuild season. They're not going anywhere.
Obviously,
you hear.
Do we even have to say that at this point?
The problem is you hear so many people that say, "Well, these aren't the guys. We need to get rid of them. They're 4 games into a rebuild season that isn't about wins and losses for them. Like, they're not going anywhere. And secondly,
sorry, let me just interrupt there.
No, you're good.
They gave obviously the previous regime at least 1 year too long, if not arguably 2. These guys aren't going anywhere in 4 games, people.
So the second part of that was I said, I get and I understand the criticism of the Kyler Gordon selection. You have to remember a lot of rookie corners struggle. In fact, stretch of Jalen Johnson's rookie season, people were calling him a bust and ready to ride him out of town. Now he's regarded as one of the best man-to-man corners in football. So I think
this is true.
So I think at times, us included, I think at times we get caught up in the moment and we want them to play as good as they did that first game of the year. We want them to play that good every week. It's just not realistic.
No,
they're rookies,
especially when
they're
you're
going
a
to
rookie.
make rookie mistakes, especially, corner safeties. Anybody that's out there covering people or, playing a role in the secondary, they're gonna struggle at times. It's just part of the game.
Oh, absolutely. It's growing pains, especially like you said, for a guy that's playing at that high level of a position with that much, I'd say, vulnerability. You look at any guy that's a rookie corner, safety, anybody that's in the secondary, and these guys are targeted intentionally at a higher percentage to try to expose them. And, quarterbacks look at them as the weak point on the team until they prove themselves. So they get more targets intentionally because of that. And they're bound to make some rookie mistakes. I'm not disappointed with Brisker or Gordon at this point. Sure, they've had some growing pains, but I think they're showing a lot of the right signs that make me feel pretty good about their future here in Chicago.
Yeah, I think they've definitely done enough to make you feel comfortable that saying that they're pieces of the future of the competitive, the Bears, when they're ready to compete, those are 2 guys that are going to be starters for this Bears defense. As far as Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus, I said Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus must get better at their jobs and must be held accountable for the lack of offense. I don't mind the shotgun runs. I don't mind the going for it on 4th down. I don't mind the quarterback draws. However, I do have a problem not spreading the field out like Green Bay did under Luke Getsy, allowing the quarterback to get through the progressions and find the open man, or at least take off and run and have lanes to run through. It also keeps teams from being able to stack the box against the run, taking the run away, which is something the Bears do better than they do pass right now. It also creates more lanes for running from the quarterback or the running back. I think we just want to see it that saying that everybody's out, make it make sense. Like, I just want it to make sense. I want to see you've got a quarterback who's used to a spread offense and you've got a struggling offense that's supposedly built around speed. I'm tired of seeing the max protect, double tight end, running back, 2 receivers on the field, 1 receiver on the field, spread it out, give Justin a chance to have somebody create some separation and make these windows a little bigger for him to throw in, open up the lanes for him to run in when there is nothing there. I think part of the problem is when teams are stacking the box to take away the run and they're staying around the line of scrimmage. They're not afraid of a deep pass from this Bears offense. So when that happens, when he does decide to run, there's somebody there. So now he hesitates. Now he doubles back. Now he turns his back to the field to make one of those Superman plays that we've seen him make. I just think if they spread the field a little more, it opens things up a little bit.
So I will say this in that regard, especially to the play calling. I am of the opinion, and I may get roasted for saying this, but I'm of the opinion that if Justin Fields throws the ball, let's say 25 times in a game, that's higher than what we've seen thus far, but not crazy, doable, achievable, right? I feel comfortable giving him 25 shots.
25 to 30.
So if Justin Fields goes out and he gets 25 to 30 shots in the game, 45% of those shots need to be bootlegs.
Bootleg, play action, something to give the defense something else to look at. But I think the bootleg more than the play action I like with Justin because it allows him to just play.
Just play
Right, like,
football. Cut
he
the
doesn't
field in
have
half.
yeah.
Let him roll out. And he's got the speed to utilize on every single bootleg. Here's my
Right.
thing. Here's what I'll break it down percentage-wise. I'd say 45% of the time he needs to be in a bootleg or a play action formation. You need probably about 20%, I'll say 20% RPOs mixed in there. So, if you're looking at 30 plays, you're looking at let's say 5 to 6 RPOs a game. And then the
the other
rest of the time you see him out of shotgun. I just don't understand fundamentally and conceptually what we're doing and why we're doing the things we're doing when it comes to the offensive sets. Like you said, you run this 2 tight end max protects set, and it's just that's not what Justin Fields is going to excel in. He's going to excel in those bootlegs, those rollouts, the RPOs, that option game that opens things up. Just, I don't want to say makes football simpler, but makes it more fun, makes it just you're going out there and making a play and you don't have to think so much, which I think would be beneficial to him at this point in his career.
Yeah, I think you're dead on with that. I think it just lets him kind of have more of a natural feel to his game versus having to think everything. And, I just, the problem with, I'd like to see him at 25 to 30 pass attempts a game. I think 30 is a good number that you can have 30 pass plays and still have a run heavy offense and still get 30 pass attempts. The problem is when you're going 3 and out, it's hard to get to 70, 80 plays because you're just not getting that many at a time on offense. So, the two kind of run hand to hand. But yes, I definitely agree with you. I would much rather see them kind of just let him play and react versus, okay, I want you to think and, scan the whole field and don't lose track of this guy. I just let him go out there and be who he is. You get Lamar Jackson out on the edge. You get Patrick Mahomes out on the edge, who obviously Justin's a lot faster than Patrick Mahomes. But you get those guys out on the edge and defenses have to, somebody has to account for the quarterback or he's going to pick up the first down. So then you naturally start to creep up and that's when you can hit him over the top.
Exactly. I agree 100%. Alluding to Patrick Mahomes, man, when I was watching the Sunday night game, you know what play I'm going to bring up?
Which one? There could have been like 4 of them, but it was probably the underhand.
Yeah, the underhand flick of the wrist. Little dart that he throws as he runs up to the line of scrimmage, drags his back foot to make sure he's behind the line, and just flick of the wrist.
Well, then later on, he had the full like underhand slow pitch softball style.
That shovel pass.
Hardman.
Yep.
Like I just
incredible.
I mean, you watch him. Go ahead. No, I was gonna say you watch him play and you watch that whole offense in general, and it's like that's who you want your offense to be. Like they're fun to watch. They are very good at what they do, and it's almost impossible to stop them.
And Andy Reid loves cheeseburgers. He's going to get one after every win.
Hey, and the worst part of it is every time they're out there and Mahomes is rocking and rolling, he comes back to the sideline and we get to see good old Matt Nagy talking in his ear like he's actually coaching him on something.
That's one thing that I question is how much involvement Matt Nagy really has. He was Patrick Mahomes before Matt Nagy left, and he was Patrick Mahomes when Matt Nagy came back.
Don't get me wrong, Matt Nagy is heralded as a very good quarterback coach. So that takes nothing away from him as a quarterback coach. As a head coach and a play caller, he leaves a lot to be desired. But, it's something about he has the knowledge to be able to speak, to Patrick about different things that he sees. It's just another set of eyes for Patrick. Like, I'm seeing this. Well, what if we do this? Oh, yeah, it's a good idea. That type of thing. It's just a comfort thing at this point.
He was a great arena football quarterback.
He really was. He was, and even as a quarterback coach, like he he knows what he's talking about. He just, not everybody's a play caller. And unfortunately,
and that's fine. He just couldn't get out of his own way as the Bears.
Well, that's what I
mean.
And unfortunately, when you hire a Matt Nagy, you don't hire him as a head coach to be a leader of men. You hire him for his offensive guru-ness that didn't ever show up.
It was there a little bit in the first year, but then people figured him out, right? And he started going away from it.
Yeah,
we didn't get to see no turbo reek in year 2, 3, 4, and 5.
No,
years 2, 3, and 4, I mean.
The other part of this whole Bears thing is we've covered pretty much the whole Bears roster is Ryan Poles, right? So I said, Ryan Poles, you don't get a pass either. I'll give you time to see how draft picks turn out. Mainly Gordon Brisker and Velus Jones. But I got a question to Velus Jones pick. There has to be more than just the speed you liked out of him to tell you that you should have picked him over wide receivers like David Bell, who went 99.
Thank you.
And Romeo Doubs, who went at 142. To take Velus where you took him tells me that you thought that he had more than just speed, where I think a guy like David Bell brings more to the table. And we've seen an unknown name like Romeo Doubs step into Green Bay and already become the number one receiver. And then I said, and this goes back to what you said, and all that being said, I know he's been hurt, but Velus still hasn't even been able to crack the offensive game plan yet. So, that being of a poor wide receiver core. Romeo Doubs has become the number one in Green Bay. They got guys like Randall Cobb and Sammy Watkins and Christian Watson and guys that were supposed to be the guy, and now Romeo Doubs is the number one. David Bell is the number two, and he's the clear-cut number two in a poor receiver core, but that does have Amari Cooper in it. And David Bell has already, dug himself out a spot in that offense and a game plan, and he missed most of preseason, everything with an injury. So, same
David Bell, University of Purdue guy.
Yeah,
got to see a lot of his work on local games and everything. And I liked him when he was coming out of college. I thought Bell was the move in the third round if you were going receiver.
I did as well.
That they did go that way, but
like I said, when you take Brisk or Velus where you did when Bell went 99 and Dobbs went 142. And, they're already producing. And then it takes us into the 2023 offseason. So the 2023 offseason, you made moves to give yourself the most cap space of any team in the NFL. You have to go and make it count now. Go big. Go very big. Identify your must-adds. Identify your top targets and pay them more than anyone else is willing to pay them because you have the money to spare. If Lamar Jackson, by some miracle, hits the open market, you have to give him a blank check. Same with Orlando Brown Jr. There's several big-time offensive linemen that if they hit the market, you just can't miss on them. You have to go get them, as well as Levante David. There's just certain things there that everything the Bears have done has been to set them up to have that cap space. You have to make that worth it. You make it worth it by going and signing, an Orlando Brown Jr., 2 or 3 offensive linemen, Levante David, somebody that is going to be an instant game changer.
Immediate impact type guys.
Yeah.
I do have to say, I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to hit the open market. And even if he does, I don't think that's the Bears move, right? As long as Justin Fields starts showing some signs by the end of this season, I think it'll be too soon for them to try to go after a guy at quarterback, a respected veteran like Lamar Jackson, or a rookie in the draft. Realistically,
I definitely think that the odds of that happening are about less than 1%.
And hey, you know what? You said something similar, a take that seemed outlandish about DeMar DeRozan
a
couple years ago, and here we are. So I don't know, man. Maybe it happens. You're saying there's a chance, but no, realistically, I like what you're bringing to the table there. Go out, be aggressive in free agency. I think this team's going to look a lot different next year, and I think that's what we as Bears fans, when the team's struggling, need to remember is the guys weren't there in free agency last year. They're going to be there this coming season, and it's up to both the GM and the head coach to identify those guys and go out and say, okay, this is the guy that we want to go after. We think he's going to be an immediate impact player.
Yeah,
and he's going to make a difference on this team.
You've created that cap space. You moved Khalil Mack. You did all these things to get you cap space for 2023. Right. Like you have to use it. You can't, the Colts are a pretty good team, but every year they have the most cap space and don't spend it. At some point you're not going to get better if you don't spend that money. You can't. It takes too long. By the time you draft a whole team, those guys have already come up in contract and left to go other places.
Right. Agreed. I think this regime's going to have a terrific offseason this coming offseason. And like I said, it's one thing we have to remember as Bears fans. When the times get tough like they did on Sunday, we have to look forward and know that ultimately this is what this team is right now, but it doesn't mean it's what it's going to be. This could be a very different looking team in a year's time. And as long as we see some signs out of Justin here, which I believe we will over the next few weeks, see them utilize Justin's pass ability more. I think they're going to kind of pull back the reins a little bit. They have to. That's what, well, I don't want to say they have to, but that's what they should do, is give their quarterback the opportunities right in that 25 to 30 passes per game sweet spot. What I would like to see them do is come out and switch the rhythm up, switch the rotation. And what I mean by that is don't be afraid to take those shots on first down. And if it's a second and run situation, don't be afraid to give Justin an opportunity to make a pass, because like you said, if you're going 3 and out, there's not many opportunities for your quarterback. So you may have to create those opportunities by being a little unorthodox and going pass when people are thinking you're going run, and ultimately that'll help get the pressure off of him and all those things as well. So I think it's going to be a long season. I think I don't want to give another prediction. I'm going to still stick to my guns and that the Bears are going to hit the over and win 7 or more games. That's where I think this team's ceiling is right now, is about 7 wins. I don't think the 10 that I said at the start of the season are attainable unless things really start clicking on all cylinders. But again, only time will tell. Being conservative, I think it's safe to say that this is a 6 to 7 win team, and there's going to be some ugly losses. There's going to be some losses where they stay in the game right up to the end, and it's a heartbreaker, kind of like this past Sunday. I mean, they were 1 touchdown and a 2-point away from sending the game into overtime for a majority of the second half there. So it's
to kind of tie everything together, I said, in closing, Bears fans must remember this is a rebuild. Even if we don't want it to be, the truth of the matter is it is. It's here. We're in the midst of a rebuild. The Bears are going to lose games that they should win. They're going to look really, really bad at times. Forget wins and losses, but if at the end of this season Justin Fields has taken steps forward in his growth as a franchise quarterback, Luke Getsy has taken steps as a play caller, you can identify several players as building blocks for the future of this Bears team, and all that is followed up by Ryan Poles being the biggest player in free agency, and then get some good players in the draft. And this rebuild won't be so long, and this Bears team will be on the field competing and getting wins before a lot sooner than if the old regime was still here and without the new regime in place.
I like it. Very well said. Good reflection, man. You definitely hit on the offense and the defense and wrapped it all up very well, very professionally. I think, definitely put your glasses on and saw both sides of the equation.
I just think that at the end of the year, that's going to determine if this season was a success or not. If they win 10 games and they go into the playoffs and get their heads beat in the first round of the playoffs,
what good does that
doesn't make it more of a success than if we have a high draft pick and Justin Fields looks better than he does now. Luke Getsy looks better as a play caller than he does now because he's learning too. He's a first-time play caller, in Green Bay. Yeah, he was the offensive coordinator, but he wasn't necessarily calling the plays.
Right.
I forget his name. The head coach up there, he was the one calling. LaFleur. He's the one calling the plays. And then so I did because, we had somebody write in and ask who would we like to see the Bears take in the first round. And we said, obviously, it depends. You know, we were talking with Ace, and we said, obviously, it depends what spot they pick.
Right.
You know, and meatheadish, I said, if Bryce Young is there and this and that. I think the more realistic and beneficial picks, the targets for that high draft pick that you think the Bears are going to have would be if they go offensive tackle. I think it would either be Jalen Duncan out of Maryland or Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. I think either one of those guys would, you know, really help this offensive line transition into, you know, an upper echelon offensive line that can actually give Justin some time. And then, you know, if there's nobody there because the free agent class isn't great at wide receiver, you know, depending where you pick, maybe you go wide receiver. And I think for me, the two I'd love to see would be Jordan Addison out of USC. I think he came in kind of third on that chart to begin the year, but I think the season he's had has really put him in that platform to be the number one receiver taken. If not him, I think Jackson Smith Nahiba out of Ohio State. I think he would be, you know, he did play with Justin a little bit. I think I just think he would be a guy that fits what the Bears need is that number one receiver. So to kind of wrap everything up, I think for me, I'd have to go offensive lineman, but you never know how the draft plays out, where you're picking and everything. But I think for me, it would have to be offensive tackle or wide receiver.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with you there. I think obviously you were defensive oriented in the first and with your first two picks, both in the second round. This previous year, I think you have to come out and get you have to get help for Justin Fields. So whether that's an offensive lineman or a wide receiver, I'm going to throw a curveball in here. What if you go after an elite tight end in the first round because Cole Kmet's not what we thought he was going to be by the end of this year?
I think if you fix the offensive line, I think you'll learn that Cole Kmet is what we thought he was. And he just
right now he's blocking
get into
too
that
much
spot because he's got to stay so close to the line of scrimmage that it's hard for him to become part of the offense when he's more of a lineman than he is anything else right now.
Fair enough. It's frustrating though because you would like to see him in that Jimmy Graham big-bodied tight end in the end zone.
Like to see him in the Travis Kelce role. Like that's what everybody thought he was going to be, was Travis Kelce, George Kittle, block a little, catch the ball, do some things, you know. But like I said,
unfortunately, we're not there right now.
Right now, unfortunately, he's part of the offensive line for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely, I agree, man. No, I don't think we could wrap it up a better way. Want to say thank you to everyone that took the time out to listen and watch with us tonight. As always, we will be back to do Turtles Take on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. So be sure to tune in next week. We'll have a special show for you. Appreciate you all and hope you enjoyed the Bears chatter. We're a little bit more level-headed after we've had a couple days to recoup and reanalyze. So thanks everybody for watching and have a good night, everybody.